Alpha and Omega. Key of David, Isaiah 6, Part 2. This discussion continues the Alpha and the Omega, and Isaiah 53, the Key of David, and Daniel 9. And as you proceed with this discussion, one is left shaking with the literal, thundering evidence Isaiah saw from chapter 6 of Isaiah. The Alpha equals pre-incarnate Christ. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And one cried unto another, and said, Holy, holy, holy is Yahweh of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For mine eyes have seen the King, the Yahweh of hosts. What Isaiah saw, and that was the glory of he who made. And when considers the enormity of the Alpha and the Omega when reading Isaiah 6, that should take the threshold foundations, shake the threshold foundations of the reader's own residence. Why? The reason is twofold. The eternal identity of he who made equals I am Alpha and Omega, and those who know Isaiah 6 recognize the relation to the final cleansing of the Day of Atonement at the court. Individual sins are purged, atoned, but the cleansing is the cleansing of unclean lips. But what about it? Isaiah, who saw the glory of he who made, then explains how one is to consider what that eternal glory of he who made entails, since he who made said, he was the root and offspring of David, the key of David. Revelation 22:13 and 16. Then they, the Phillies, are described as having little strength, and yet know why he who made conveyed that no man closes or opens the purpose of the key of David. Revelation 3:7 and 8. These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. This fact becomes full prominence at the sealing time, but more importantly, the last ministration of Christ as great high priest, after the order of Melchizedek, who ministers the seal of God, Ezekiel 9, Revelation 7, but also the cleansing atonement at the altar in the court for the individual, Leviticus 16, 18 and 20. But not only that, Isaiah is setting out for those with eyes to see the purpose of real-time cleansing. Yes, the unclean lips, the lips of guile, false testimony, the lips are what must be cleansed on the Day of Atonement, and it's with a live coal from the altar, sealed into truth, and then cleansed. This is of absolute importance. Why? Note how it's explained. Then flew one of the seraphims unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar. And he laid it upon my mouth, and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin purged. Comment. How could Isaiah even begin to describe the glory, the eternal glory of eternal everlasting Father, number 2, John 1:1, the Alpha scenario, and then immediately admit to his own unclean lips? This takes you to the very core of the first angel's warning about any description about the majesty of he who made and his eternal identity, and therefore any discussion about the doctrine of the Godhead means true worship. That means anything less than the truth of the Alpha and the Omega, root and offspring of David, means one is unclean. Unclean lips? Blasphemy? Isaiah saw the glory of the Alpha and the Omega scenario. How? Well, it's what Isaiah said in 9:6-7. Is Isaiah giving the reader the clearest expression of the apotelesmatic application of what is the twofold purpose on the final atonement, which is, 1, how the last ministration at the altar of the court reflects those whose sins are purged, but the purpose of whose lips are cleansed, and then known to have no guile in their mouths, Revelation 14, 1-5, and, number 2, who are associated with the final testimony of he who made in respect to the first angel's warning and the loud cry. Isaiah is providing special counsel for the dull of hearing about the eternal purpose of the ushering of everlasting righteousness in its twofold context of the key of David, and why he who made described himself, I am Alpha and Omega, first and the last, and the everlasting gospel. What Isaiah saw actually destroys everything about the confounded and confusing creedal applications of the one God, the Triune Trinity, and especially God the Eternal Son. Infernal heresy, fundamental beliefs 2 and 4, as well as Shema and the Shahada, that are all about the law of one. Now, place Isaiah 6 in the context of the Antichrist of 2 Thessalonians 2 and disbelieve the Alpha and the Omega. Notice what happens. Even him, whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. But we are bound to give thanks always to God for you, brethren, beloved of the Lord, because God hath from the beginning chosen you to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. The belief of the delusional lie about the Alpha and the Omega, then one believes the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies. The context of 2 Thessalonians is the war of the Antichrist with the 10 kings of Revelation 17, 13-14, upon the first angel's warning, which is in the time frame of the reign of the first beast, the 1260 days. The one God doctrine of the Antichrist blasphemes the Elohim, two fathers of John 1:1. So what about the lips of uncleanness sustaining those lies in the many forms of the creeds of Neoplatonist, Arian, Gnosticism doctrines? Lips not cleansed? No testimony. Who then has the true testimony of the glory of Isaiah? When it comes to the testimony of the Alpha and Omega, and therefore the key of David? More later. Alpha identity of John 1. The Alpha status of he who made is John 1:1. He who made's Alpha identity is his eternal glory, his eternal righteousness, Revelation 13:8. Without, there is no basis of his Alpha glory, let alone the Alpha of eternal righteousness, let alone the pristine truth of the everlasting gospel, let alone the twofold conclusion, the cleansing of Christ's high priestly ministration on the final ministration. The last ministration on the Day of Atonement, let alone the entire purpose of the sealing of Revelation 7, let alone the importance of eternal righteousness by faith in Revelation 13, 8-9. Heavenly temple shook, and the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for mine eyes have seen the King, Yahweh of hosts. What Isaiah saw was some experience. He saw and heard what shook the threshold of the house in heaven. It was so important that shuddering is confirming John 1:1, eternal glory of eternal Father, number 2, Alpha, and unto us a child is born, the Son is given, who was the everlasting Father of Isaiah 9:6-7, the Omega. What should shake the readers to the core is this fact renders the doctrine of God the Eternal Son as the ultimate concept in spiritualism, the apex of spiritualism, as proven in prior discussions in this series. See this link. The Omega of deadly heresies voids the Alpha, and the result is zero awareness of eternal righteousness of he who made. That thunderous announcement Isaiah experienced in Isaiah 6:4 should also shake the very foundations of the reader's mindset about the first angel's warning, and that any laziness about the entire concept of the Alpha and Omega of Revelation 22:13-16, and the final cleansing on the Day of Atonement, is the exposure and expression of the utmost spiritual danger. The pronouncement of that eternal glory was thunderous, shook the temple in heaven. The foundations of the thresholds shook. The foundations in heaven trembled. Their voices shook the temple to its foundations. The foundations of the thresholds quaked. Their voices caused the frame around the door to shake. Isaiah 6 continues. Yet the strangest situation arises. Ears to hear and don't, eyes to see, and it's a big problem that extends to our age. And he said, Go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert, and be healed. So, does Isaiah 6:10 sound like 2 Thessalonians 2:10-12? And with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Those damned who believed not the first angel and the Alpha and Omega? Oh, that's ridiculous and impossible. Question mark. Well, they had pleasure in unrighteousness. The denial of eternal righteousness by faith in Revelation 13:8-9. Let that sink in, because the time frame is the time of the Antichrist, the eighth king. Right? In Matthew 13, he who made quotes Isaiah 6. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their eyes are dull of hearing. Ears. And their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Some important questions. Why is it important? What is the importance of the key of David and the Alpha and Omega status? What are the issues to not have the key of David? Be honest. Ask yourself. Can you give a truthful testimony of he who made, consistent with Mark 12 or John 1:1, which is all about Christ's eternal identity, with the Gnostic, Neoplatonist, Arian Father, Son, and eternity doctrines, contrary to John 1:1, when all along, which is not your fault, thou hast ignored he who made claim he is Alpha and Omega and the root and offspring of David. Right? If all you can do is parrot the creedal one God formulation of the Trinity, and then parrot the God, the eternal Son, fundamental number 4, well, that is speaking with unclean lips. If you really want to know, it's perpetuating the Omega of deadly heresies. Yet when it came to the Alpha scenario of he who made of Mark 12, the common people heard him gladly, and they believed Christ's own testimony, not only to be the promised Messiah, but what they grasped was this: he had an individual eternal identity. Therefore, by citing Isaiah 6 as follows, and Jesus answered and said while he taught in the temple, How say the scribes say that Christ is the son of David? Omega, Romans 1:3-4. For David himself said by the Holy Spirit, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit thou on my right hand till I make thine enemies thy footstool. David, therefore, himself called him Lord, Alpha, Father number 2. And whence is he then his son? Omega. And the common people understood and heard him gladly. Mark 12:37. David therefore himself called him Lord, and whence is he then his son? And the common people heard him gladly. Otherwise, if this discussion on the Alpha and the Omega and the eternal identity of he who made in its fullest and completeness is unto his eternal righteousness and glory, well, it means it is the foundation of the first angel's warning. Worship he who made. Now, if Isaiah 6 doesn't shake the very doorposts of your understanding about the Godhead, as it did in heaven, Isaiah 6, well, here is the conclusion. And it's here is for those who are fat of heart and dull of hearing, having eyes that cannot see. All you have left from that mouth of yours is to parrot the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies. Now notice. And he said, Go tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, make their ears heavy, shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert and be healed. Then said I, Lord, how long? And for that dullness about the Alpha and Omega, Sister White trembled for the people. Worse, you cannot be used by God to bring a witness about the testimony of Jesus. It's impossible, because thine mouth is full of guile. Listen to Isaiah 6. It's the catch cry of the loud cry, Revelation 18 and Matthew 25. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here I am, send me. And he said, Go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Now, think for a minute. Isaiah 6, 8-9, and heaven asked the question, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. The answer infers, they who have the key of David, and are given the command to go, why are they chosen? They responded to the shaking of the heavenly temple. They do not underestimate why the key of David is implicit with the Alpha and the Omega. And if you hadn't noticed, it's one of the last validations and reminders in the book of Revelation. See Revelation 22, 13, and 16. Now ask yourself, are those whose lips are cleansed who go forth after the cleansing of their unclean lips with the testimony of he who made? Yes, that is nothing other than what Isaiah saw, and explains that eternal glory, and is what explains the first angel's warning. Yes, the Alpha and the Omega. Most would not perceive by ear or sight. Isaiah 6:4. Why? What is required? That's the cleansing of the live coal and the unclean lips who blah, omega, deadly heresies, and don't realize this is why Christ is worshipped. Then, for those who say, Here I am, send me, they will speak up at the time of the loud cry, for in their mouths is no guile, and thankfully the wise virgins respond. Those who have some oil are those with ears to hear. And it's a pure, clean garment, a belief by faith to be sealed, of the eternal glory, the righteousness of the saints, eternal righteousness by faith. Their testimony is eternal righteousness of he who made, and it's all from John 1:1, because the cleansing on the Day of Atonement cleanses the lips by the live coal from off the altar. Look again at Isaiah 6 and why the live coal was taken from off the altar and applied to cleanse one's mouth that produces what? No guile. And of course, you know the sealing, the mark or the seal of God, Ezekiel 9, the sealing time of Revelation 7, and from the cleansing of the Day of Atonement, what does Isaiah conclude? Yep, sins purged and the lips cleansed from all guile. No lies. Greek, pseudos. What is the time frame to be sent? It's the time of the loud cry, and on and beyond it, into the 1260 days. Isaiah 2. Why? Read Revelation chapter 10. But in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he hath declared to his servants the prophets. And the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and said, Go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. And I went unto the angel and said unto him, Give me the little book. And he said unto me, Take it, and eat it up. It shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand, and ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And he said unto me, Thou must prophesy again before many peoples, and nations, and tongues, and kings. The reason it was sweet and bitter is simple. Sweet to share the little book, and bitter to endure the 1260 days. Matthew 24:15, on to the 1335. All because of the Alpha and the Omega, the key of David, proves Isaiah 53 and 6, the final atonement, cleansing, and Daniel 9:25 to 27. Four fundamental dictums. The conclusion, the revelation of that glory to Isaiah 6, the key of David, and the final atonement. How? For the express purpose of calling many sons to glory. If God in the Old Testament time didn't speak through sonship, then it is in New Testament times that he speaks through sonship, based on four fundamental dictums. Number one, a child is born, a son is given. 2, Son of God according to the flesh, according to the seed of David. 3, Jesus' words, I am Alpha, I am Omega, the offspring of David. And 4, Psalms 110:4, David's Lord was already present alongside eternal Father number 2, prior to the decree of the sent rod, which issued forth and would be fulfilled. Root and offspring of David. Therefore, the four dictums prove Christ cannot be the root. All the while, the creeds say, God the eternal Son, apex of spiritualism. Let it be known, in this Alpha and Omega series, the mystery of the Omega of deadly heresies has been solved. As for the root and offspring of David, that is the Alpha and the Omega. Well, it's plain. This is the key of David. Why? Because he who made described in Revelation 22:13 and 16 what Isaiah saw, the glory of Christ's eternal righteousness. When one differentiates this, you would be abandoning everything creedal and Neoplatonist, Gnostic, or Arian, and any and all emanated sonship abominations, Father, Son, and eternity mysteries. Why? The Omega of deadly heresies is deadly. That awareness of the Omega of deadly heresies is the sublime deafness and deceptiveness, and should shake the very doorposts of your dwelling, and even shake you to the foundations, just as the angel visited Egypt, and those doors that had not the blood of the Lamb on the posts. You know the story. Now the key of David brings to reality the eternal reality of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the earth. Revelation 13:8, and eternal righteousness. Seems absurd this verse is even required in Revelation 13, right? No, it's not. It is more important than the mark or the image. And the reason? Because Revelation 13:8-9 is the final proof testimony of the first angel's warning, and it's in ultimate context of the war upon which Christ is the Alpha and the Omega. And it is the only divine testimony for the time of the mark and image of the beast, as to those plus 30 days after the first beast reign for the 1260 unto the 1290, and then follows the plus 45 days to the 1335. Right? Keep in mind, the two witnesses' testimony, Revelation 11, ends at the 1260, the end of the reign of the first beast. Would the two witnesses not be giving witness to the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world, eternal righteousness by faith, and the Alpha and the Omega of he who made? Revelation 13:8. Nevertheless, entering the plus 30 days after the 1260 unto the 1290, the fence-sitters and the do-nothings, the fat of heart, the dull of hearing, find it's too late to be responding to the first angel's warning, as one would be inclined to falsehood about the Alpha and Omega during the time of the 1260-day reign of the eighth king, the reign of the first beast, anyway. Why? Because at the time of the loud cry, Revelation 18:1-5, midnight of Matthew 25, and only the 5 wise virgins responded. The foolish went away to the vendors of oil, their lamps going out. Keep in mind this decision, which is about the Alpha and the Omega, is at the loud cry, and then is the time of the deadly wound of the seventh king, and only after the loud cry. Thence commences the 1260 reign of the first beast. Then the second beast emerges for the additional 30 days. There is real peril during the time known as the abomination of desolation. And for those who arrived at this juncture thinking this is novel wonderment, explain why in Revelation 13:8 Christ, the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world, And what is that all about? And why is Revelation 13:9 required to be said, let alone emphasizing eternal righteousness about the Alpha and Omega in that same chapter? If any man have an ear, let him hear. Hey, wasn't that the conclusion of Isaiah 6, Mark 12, in the key of David? Eternal doctrine of both Elohim, the two divines, John 1:1, Isaiah 44:6, Psalms 110, etc. He who made said he was the Alpha and the Omega. Revelation 22:13 and 16. The common people heard him gladly. Do you have an ear to hear? Anyone home? Hello?